Good morning, America. This is Gary here. I've got a question for you. I was watching, of course, sometimes you open up YouTube and they recommend streams and videos to you. I don't often watch videos from Tim Pool. However, one was recommended to me and I decided to watch it. And he was making a very good point here. We have the First Amendment here in the United States. We refer to it as freedom of speech. It is not a right that was given to us by our Constitution or even our founding fathers. They did not give us this right. They merely recognized that that is a right that the federal government cannot infringe upon. It's a protected right. And that it's into our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and it's not that the government has the authority to give us that right or to take that right away. The government has the obligation to make sure that that right is not infringed upon by either government or other state agencies. But the point that Tim was making, because it all sort of stemmed back to Pam Bondi the other day, after Charlie Kirk's demise, she was talking about there's free speech and there's hate speech. And those of us on the right are like, whoa, put the brakes on that, cheerleader. Deplorable speech is protected speech. And on the one hand, we're like, no, do not infringe upon our freedom of speech. That's exactly what Charlie Kirk's message was all these years. We have the right to say what we want to say, to express what we want to express. It is not a right that can be taken away. And if you call it hate speech, I mean, all we're doing is heading down the same path of England and Europe. And on the one hand, you have the vice president trotting off to Europe and Great Britain, scolding them about their infringement upon the free speech of their citizenry. And on the other hand, we have Pam Bondi saying we need to classify speech, hate speech. Of course, we're not surprised by that because Pam Bondi did the same thing in Florida. You remember when Ron DeSantis went off to Israel and signed the legislation into law in the middle of the night that would make it illegal in the state of Florida to participate in anything that is labeled as hate speech, and on the one hand you say, well, why is that bad? Well, the bad part is that they surrendered the defining of hate speech to groups that have ties and loyalties to foreign countries. That's where the real rub is, because those groups have already defined portions of the New Testament, the Christian Bible, as being hate speech. So if you're a practicing Christian, part of your role, your responsibility as a Christian is to preach the whole counsel of God, to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. Part of the gospel of Jesus Christ is that there is no other way to get to the Father except through Christ. He is the way. Well, that to them is hate speech. And so it was a real problem. Well, Pam Bondi advocated for that in Florida. Now she's the attorney general, and she's slipping up and she's saying, well, there's free speech and there's hate speech. We can't allow hate speech. And you know where this is going. This is a slippery slope. And so all of us on the right are like, whoa, hold on there. No. That's the exact opposite of what Charlie Kirk was preaching. But Tim Pool actually, who is in agreement with that, but he pointed out the rub here. So it is illegal to make threats, death threats to people. That is illegal. You cannot do that. You cannot say, I am going to X you. It's illegal. So here's what the left does. And it's sort of a loophole in the law. And the question is, how do we fix this without infringing upon our rights of freedom of speech? So here's what the left does. The left takes a group of people, and it is orchestrated, and it is planned, and it is by design. But they'll take group A to begin screaming, teaching, lecturing. They'll put it in textbooks. They'll put it in social media. They'll use Hollywood. And they began to push this message that, let's just say, for example, Nazis are evil. And it starts off, Nazis are evil. There's no place for Nazis in American society, in our groups, in our schools, in our churches. And Nazis are evil. And most of the public are like, yeah, we agree with that. But then they push it a little further. Nazis deserve to die. And you hear that message repeated over and over again in a variety of ways. Nazis are evil. They shouldn't be allowed to exist. They deserve to die. Fascists, etc. They push that message, but they don't overtly say, we're going to blank you. They just say, these types of people deserve to die. But then there's Group B that comes along, and they begin, after years of preaching the message, Nazis deserve to die, fascists deserve to die, Group B comes along and says, you're a Nazi, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're a racist. You see? Then they surround you with people who say, you're a Nazi, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're a racist, over and over and over and over again for several years. All the while, Group A is continuing to push the message, those types of people deserve to die. Group B says, you are this, you are that, you are that. Then there is Group 3, who has listened to Group A and to Group B, and there has been something that has ticked in them that says, well, why not just take care of these people? By take care of, you know what I mean. So neither Group A nor Group B is making an overt threat to you by themselves, but together, the threat is very real. And it is well understood. So Group A, what they say, can't be prevented by law because it's protected speech. What Group B says is also protected speech. You can't really do anything about that, but you put Group A and Group B together and the threat is real. The death threat is real. So what do you do about that? That's where we're at in this country. We're at a point where we're going to have to make some drastic moves, some uncomfortable moves, some moves that we might not agree with. And I'm not advocating. I'm saying I don't know what we should do. If you have an idea of how you think our country should handle this going forward, while preserving the freedom of speech that we enjoy, leave your thoughts in the comments. God bless you. I hope you have a great day.